Hello everyone, thank you for joining us here today. This presentation, iJam with Channel Randomization, is conducted by the members of the Cybersecurity Laboratory under the direction of Dr. Yao Zhang. Today we will present you a physical layer key generation scheme proposed to establish a secure wireless communication.
Physical layer key generation schemes aim to establish a shared key between two parties through an open channel eavesdropped by an adversary. The majority of the arrangements utilize the changing wireless channel to generate key bits, with a generation rate proportional to the entropy of the channel. The more random the channel, the faster the key is generated. A few other designs seek to make key generation rate independent from the channel variation by injecting artificial noise into the wiretap channel to aid security. An example of such physical layer key generation schemes is iJam, through which the transmitter duplicates each key symbol and transmits it back to back, while the legitimate receiver randomly jams one of the copies. This method is known to provide a physical layer security against single antenna eavesdroppers who cannot differentiate between the jammed and unjammed signals. However, this method is not secure against multi-antenna eavesdroppers who equalize the wiretap channel effect and may leverage the variance between channel receptions to identify the jammed and unjammed signals.
Hi, I'm Thomas Yang, and I'll be going over the project description. Physical layer security is much weaker compared to cryptography, as you do not have a shared secret, or a key, protecting your transmission from being deciphered by others. Although there are methods to obfuscate the transmission of the key so only the legitimate receiver will know the message, such as jamming, this can easily be beaten by a multi-antenna eavesdropper. A multi-antenna eavesdropper can utilize Alice's transmission of pilot symbols to estimate and equalize the wiretap channel, and identify which symbols are being jammed, picking out the unjammed symbols and reconstructing the key. This is where we introduce iJam with channel randomization. This method is made of two parts. The first part happens at the transmitter, or Alice in our case, which will predict and pre-equalize the channel effect that we expect to see to our legitimate receiver, Bob. This removes the need of pilot symbols, which are used to calculate the channel effect for any receivers that can see the signal, and for an eavesdropper, Eve, it adds a random variable which Eve will have trouble figuring out without these pilot symbols. The second part is to constantly rotate the transmitter's antenna. This effectively prevents the channel effect from being constant. So even if Eve is able to decipher this channel effect for one angle, it is unable to keep up with the constantly changing channel, effectively securing the transmission of the key.
To predict the CSI for different antenna modes without sending the pilot symbols, we let Alice compute the angle of arrival vector AOD using a subset of antenna modes dedicated for training. Specifically, consider the channel model shown in the slides, with Y being the received signal, H the channel state information or CSI, X the transmitted signal, and N the channel noise. We can model H as the inner product between H, the AOD vector, and A, the transmitter's antenna pattern. Note that each of the element of the AOD vector represents the environment's attenuation effect toward the transmitter's signal in a specific direction, and do not change within a short time. We leverage music, multiple signal classification algorithm to compute the H's, which minimizes the difference between the estimation and the ground truth CSI. A regular music algorithm requires Alice to measure the CSI with sufficient number of antenna modes during the training phase. However, it significantly limits the number of available antenna modes for data transmission. To reduce the number of antenna modes used during training, we convert the problem into a regularized, underdetermined LP with less equations than the unknowns, and solve it with compressive sensing technique. With the computed AOD during transmission, Alice uses it to predict H and sends the product of the inverse of H multiplied to X in order to pre-equalize the channel for Bob.
The main components that were used for this project are listed above. Starting with the antennas, we used two different models, our LPDA assembly and our high-gain Yagi antenna. The log periodic antenna, or LPDA, is used as both a transmitter, receiver, and eavesdropper, whom we will call Alice, Bob, and Eve respectively. The LPDA is a prefabricated bidirectional antenna sold for general wireless purposes. Using this antenna, Alice is made of two LPDAs placed parallel on top of each other, as seen in figure 4.2. The lower one is stationary while the upper one rotates. For Bob and Eve, both LPDAs are placed parallel on top, just like with Alice, but both are non-rotating, as shown in figure 4.1. With other scenarios where we use the Yagi antenna as a Alice, our transmitter, the entire LPDA array is removed and replaced by the Yagi. The experiments also called for use of reflectors. They were made of 26-gauge sheet metal that is cut to size and epoxied together into this shape seen in figure 4.5. To further improve the reflector's effectiveness, an additional layer of reflective foil tape was added. For the receiver's data collection and synchronization of the transmitters, we use the EDIS N210 USRPs. They are software-defined radios that are able to control what the transmitter sends and how the received signals can be analyzed without needing to have a physical setup. The USRPs also sit on a retrofitted mobile server rack designed to efficiently relocate the entire testing bed if need be. Mobility is also increased with the help of the tripods that all the antenna arrays and reflectors sit on, shown in figure 4.6. The tripods that are used were built from Schedule 80 PVC for the 3 legs, while the joints and anchors are 3D printed. The tripods were designed and developed in-house at the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
The scenario shown in figure 5.2 is replicated to an outdoor experimentation conducted near post. As shown in figure 5.1, we have a high-gain Yagi antenna placed 45 degrees and 3 meters away from the center. The receiver is a reconfigurable LPDA antenna placed 10 meters away from the center. Knowing the positions of both antennas, we are able to generate a ground truth AOD vector from the receiving antenna. This can be utilized to compare our estimation with our real-world measurements. A total of 5 scenarios were created with 3 rounds of data recording for each scenario. Alvin will next explain the results and analysis for scenario 3.
Hi, I'm Alvin Yang, and now we will go over some of the results of our experiments. Here, in figures 6.1 to 6.4, are the comparisons between the ground truth and estimated ALD vectors and CSI magnitudes at the receiver. We will be focusing on scenario 3B and 3C, where the difference between the experiments is the rotation speed, where 3B rotates at 1 RPM and 3C rotates at 3 RPM. We found that the difference in rotation speeds led to 3B and 3C's AOD vectors and CSI magnitudes to be graphically different. We can see that in figures 6.1 and 6.2, the estimated AOD vectors correlate with the ground truth, with 3B matching more closely to the ground truth. This leads into our analysis of the trade-offs between stability and key transmission speed, where a higher RPM rotator, which can change its channel quicker, may have a more unstable channel. Regarding the CSI data collected in figures 6.3 and 6.4, we can see that the measured CSI is loosely correlated to the predicted CSI. This may be due to an error in the prediction method used or an unstable phase of the data. Future improvements may include improving this technique to handle a faster RPM for a higher throughput while still retaining a stable channel, and determining what is causing the measured CSI to be different from the predicted CSI.
In conclusion, this project, iJam with Channel Randomization, successfully protects key bits from multi-antenna eavesdroppers by creating an artificially rapid changing channel. The pilot vulnerability exploited by the eavesdropper is eliminated with our CSI channel estimation mechanism, and this allows Alice to predict and pre-equalize the channel effect for Bob. iJam with Channel Randomization has presented a novel method to secure wireless communications between the transmitter and the intended receiver. For those who are interested for more details, please read our published papers in the InfoComm and WISEC conference. We want to give special thanks to Dr. Yao Zhang, Dr. Yinghui Dong, Dr. Ming Li, and Yunjun Pan for mentoring this project. Also special thanks to TMY Tech for their support and equipment. This work is partly supported by NSF grants and the ARO grant. Thank you so much.